Aloha, everyone, and this is Ryan Akata here, and thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Talking with Teal. And today I'm here with Heidi Hornlein. Is that how you say it?
Online, yeah.
Hornlein, yeah. So Heidi, how are you today?
I'm quite fine. I did quite a lot of stuff today, and it's the evening. It's almost the end of the day in Italy here. So yours is the morning, no? So we are quite.
That's right, I just woke up.
Yeah, the time zone sometimes is a challenge, but still great that we can connect, no?
It's wonderful, the integral community and people all over the world. And, people from Europe, Australia, United States. So it's quite a marvelous thing to behold. But I'm really happy to be talking with you here today. And I had the fortune of exploring your website in depth, and I was just so impressed. And it's definitely, for me, something to aspire towards and kind of like my goal and what I wanted to do with my website and podcast. So thanks for being my inspiration. And I thought we could just start with you sharing a little bit about your life and how you got into integral theory.
My life is long already. And in integral theory, I think I came in 97 when I did a course in NLP. And the teacher gave us Grace and Grit. It was in Italian, as I live in Italy. That is one of the few books which are translated in Italian. And I read that, and I was deeply touched. And then from there, I read No Boundaries. That was also translated in Italian. And from there, one book after the other. And I think in 2000, I realized that in Germany, there is a group of, in German-speaking countries, I would say it's not only Germany, a group of people who were beginning to meet live and in person. And I think in 2000, it was the first time I think I went to Berlin to meet people. And that was, very inspiring to meet people, to be able to talk about these things. Then I was not really very deep into it. I was attracted. I was very much attracted by integral theory. I still was very much in theory these days. So the intellectual attraction is, I think, at the beginning, the main thing. And what was for me is that I had the feeling, somewhere deep in my heart, I knew all this stuff. Not all this stuff, but more or less. But now I have words for that, or somebody is putting words on that. There was a sort of a vague intuition, or there is something not really right, and you don't know why. And then there comes somebody and tells you, you can see this in this way, and this the levels of development, and blah blah blah. And it's like, finally, you understand why so many things before you said, why is it like this? For instance, the gender thing, that the women were so oppressed and things like that. And Ken Wilber said, if the women had been oppressed all the time during patriarchy, then either they would be sheep or, something wrong. So as we are neither sheep nor is something wrong, he said we were participating. And it was also our choice, which doesn't justify the abuse which men did against women. But basically, women and men struggled together to survive, and it was not set up the bad men and the good women, and they were oppressed. And that was for me, and this was in 1998, more or less, the first time where I had some doubt about the feminist stuff, which before I thought, all these bad men. And, I wanted to be a man because I thought, in my youth, because I thought men have it all better and so on. And then when I came across that, it was in Up from Eden. That was a book I was so impressed about. I worked during the day and couldn't wait for coming home to read, to continue to read. So that was really big insight. But I didn't have anybody to talk. And since I discovered the German speaking groups who met every year, since then, I was there to meet these people every year. And then, then internet came on and you could begin, or at least telephone conferences and talk with people. And then there was also the Integral European Conference in 2014. And that was where we went, both my husband and myself. And I did a workshop about my integral voice training, which I developed during the last, let's say, 30 years. I don't do it anymore, but I do this internet stuff now. But anyway, and then in 2016, we were also there and we talked about conscious aging. We opened up the question about aging because I'm quite old, but he was even older. So the question is, how can we age in a different way? Because once when you were 60, you were sort of over the cliff. And so we were both quite integrated in the German-speaking integral community, although he didn't speak German, he was American, and then in the European integral community. And this really, it's a sort of, how can you say, an inspiration, because otherwise you think you are alone, if you don't have a group nearby. And here in Italy, I live in the countryside, and Italy in itself is hardly orange in spiral dynamic terms, and mostly red and blue. So I don't really find a lot of people here around to talk with, And also in Germany, my family and friends, when I began to talk about integral at the beginning, I was sort of missionary, They say, and then you realize that you better shut up because. And the thing what Ken also says, which is so true, people need to be ready to get the message. I just talked yesterday in the show with Jeff Fitch, and he said also in a certain point he read Ken Wilber a book or two, and he said, and then after some years or so, he came back to these books and said, so you obviously need to have reached a certain level of, let's say, development, not only understanding, but also development to even be interested in this kind of topics. So that's, let's say, my integral journey. And out of that, then I created, together with Mark, my husband, I created these shows, and I learned all the tech stuff which was needed to do, because I'm really not a tech person, and he even less. So if we wanted to do something, if I wanted to do something, I had to learn it. By the way, it's in 2010, I did a 3-year-long training in feminine power coaching and these things, and I understood that was a integral practice. And so that was my big motivation to go to Facebook, which I really hate, and learn telephone conferencing and all these things, and created groups to talk together. And even I had retreats here for feminine power people, and to deepen into the teaching. 4 or 5 retreats, I think, here in my house, because paradisointegrale.com, that's my place where it's quite big, and which was planned to host these things. Unfortunately, not very many are coming, but anyway, at least the space is here. So if you want to get the message out, you have to take the challenge and learn all this stuff, and that's what I'm doing since 2010, let's say 2011, and hardly ever really do things which I really want to do, which would be coaching, and even continue with the voice work. So it was voice training as a consciousness awareness training. So
wow, yeah.
In a nutshell, what's with me and integral.
Yeah, that's such a remarkable journey, and you've done so many different things under the integral umbrella, and I want to get into all of those. But the first thing I wanted to start, and I was particularly excited to talk to you about this topic, was music and your background with voice. And I have a lot of appreciation for music. I grew up playing the piano. When I went to college, I did a lot of kirtan, like bhajan, singing with the harmonium and playing the flute and playing the drums. So I have a deep appreciation for music. I'm just curious. You had mentioned your work was integral, like a voice training or voice development. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, singing, I sang in a children's choir. I come out of a non-musical family, but the children's choir and then church choir and so on and so on. And I always sang. And then at a certain point, I took lessons in Berlin while I did another study at university. Because for my parents to be a musician, a singer, no, that would not be a right thing. You can never earn money with that. So yeah. And then at a certain point, I thought I had several teachers, and everybody taught me their system. How you have to do this and and you understand it in your way. Maybe they are right, but you understand it in your way. And then normally I had some betterment, and after a while I thought, no, that's not it. So I changed at least 4 or 5 teachers in Germany. And then I already sang in a professional choir and also as a soloist. But I always thought that's not my voice. They told me, you have a tiny voice and hardly goes over the orchestra. You can sing on maximum, Baroque music. I was in classical music, And I thought, that's not what I feel. And so I went to Italy because I hoped that, I thought Italy is the land of the big singing tradition. Maybe it was, but it's not anymore. So, but anyway, I had 3 years of lessons and with a teacher who was good in the piano, and somehow again I learned the system, and especially I learned the parts, the operas, Italian opera parts. So I studied 10 Italian operas at least, and so on. That was good. So I went more into the music of opera, while in Germany I always sang, lieder and church music and concerts and so. And then at a certain point, my then Italian partner and myself, we bought a house here in the countryside, and I stopped trying to get concerts and stuff because I thought it's sort of useless. And here I had the possibility to be able to shout and scream and whatever I wanted to do without anybody to listen. Because I was always sort of inhibited by, people banging in Berlin, banging on the ceiling or on the floor when they didn't like what I did. And you have to study, you have to try out, And so here, sort of by remembering other body awareness techniques, I use them for the voice, and I developed my own voice. At a certain point, I came to the point and I said, that's how it works. And then I started teaching. For 20 years, I taught people with this method, and I learned with them, And whenever I discovered a new thing, in a week, I had about 30 students, and I could try that with everybody. And then I found out, that works and that doesn't work. And so it was really a research project. First, I did it on myself, and then the confirmation with my students. And everybody was better, except of those who already had a fixed system in themselves and couldn't let go. And the best students were those who never had any lessons, who were able to just do the inner research, because my system is based on understanding what you are doing and what you are feeling, what you are thinking, how your psyche works, and so on, whenever you emanate your voice, to realize what tensions you have, to realize what's thought. Oh, I never get up there. That is too high, or things like that. You know, how you block yourself and so. And I have also developed a method to, by touching people and moving them, unblocking the body, and give them the experience, the first experience of how their voice could be big, you know. And then afterwards starts the work. But anyway, and as I said, this is mainly based off awareness and finding out how your voice works, and not putting a system on you as it has always been on me, but really find out how your body works, how your psyche works, how they are interconnected, and then find a sort, what I call the grammar, excuse me, to understand, oh, now it worked, now it was good, and now it was not good. What is the difference? What did I do different, you know? And so slowly find out yourself how singing works, because singing is the most natural thing of your body. And when you are not able to sing with your full voice, means that there are all sorts of blockages. And for me, it's uncovering your natural voice, your natural ability. And that is also expressed in volume, you know. And so, yeah, that's it. That's what I call integral voice training, because it's it comes from many sides. Comes from the outside, you know, comes from the inside. It comes from the interior, but it comes also from the exterior, yeah, sure. But also from the collective, because when people tell you stuff, when you're in certain circles where they believe that this is right and you have to do it this way, you are conditioned. So you have to get unconditioned and find your own way to it. So there were all quadrants and involved. Maybe I didn't say it so explicitly, for sure not when I did lessons, but I was aware that it was an integral approach to voice development, you know.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant, and I really wish I had you as my voice teacher. And I can relate a lot to what you said about how a lot of teachers, they teach very mechanically, and a lot of it is only, like, in integral terms, it's only upper right quadrant, kind of external processes, and very technical about your physical approach. And then it sounds like what you're bringing in is also emphasizing the upper left quadrant and the inner process of discovery and finding your voice as kind of analogous to finding yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Beautiful practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like that. Unfortunately, I didn't find a lot of people who wanted to do that. When I taught kids, for instance, up to a certain point, yes. But then the main thing, I want to sing a song, you know, immediately. Yeah. But, you know, find this balance to the real work. So I understood later also that it depends a little bit on the level of development. I think this approach would be better for older people, but then it's not anymore for getting a profession. You know, when you start singing with 30, you can forget to be in this profession, you know, because it's very strict. Over 30, forget it, you know. So you have to start very early, and unfortunately then you go into this automatization of, you know, you just do your exercise, da 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 da. You know, and you overload your voice by doing too many exercises which are mechanical, and mechanical is just not, it's not that, you know.
Right. And other than quadrants, did you bring other elements of integral theory to inform your voice coaching, such as stages of development or states of consciousness or anything like that?
Implicitly, yes. For instance, when I teach, I'm very aware that I'm in an altered stage of consciousness. I'm very much into listening and into intuiting what is needed at the moment, you know. So it is a meditative state in which I'm normally in. When we are doing the research, when I have to teach them the notes for the songs, probably not. But when we are doing the real work, yes. And I do also much toning, which now is very much used and very much known. But when I discovered that, like improvisation in a meditative state, that was a long time ago, more than 20 years ago, I thought I was alone doing these things. Lately, I mean, almost everybody does it now, but I saw that in this state, people are less anxious or not anxious at all. And even people who say, oh no, I cannot sing, don't make me sing and stuff like this, they can tune into it and lose their fears and just emanate some sounds, which is not singing. I tell them that's not singing, you just do something, and then the improvisation when it goes ahead and a sort of a dialogue, which I can lead in the group or also with only one person. And then it develops musicality, which is free from this fear to be right. Because many people get blocked because they think they are not in tune or they can't remember or something is wrong. And when you work with improvisation in this sense, they get unblocked. So yes, I use this. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. And I love how you emphasize the spiritual part and the inner part. And I'd like to back up just for a moment and ask a little bit about your own spiritual process for yourself and what that's been like. And the two books that you started reading in integral theory, which were, there was No Boundary and Grace and Grit. And those to me are like two of Ken's, probably his most like spiritual books. And I'm curious on how that developed alongside of your own spiritual path of discovery. Was that kind of like the beginning of it? Did you already have a spiritual practice before you read that? What was that like for you?
I had a friend, I think it was in the mid-90s, and she introduced me to spiritual thoughts, because before I didn't, I refused church and all this stuff, so I didn't think it was for me, and I mainly lived maybe a spiritual life, but without knowing and without emphasizing it. And so I got to hear, it was more New Age, her ideas, but still I was listening and I thought, oh, And so it was a slow process to coming into this other aspects. What I always refused to do when I entered into the spiritual community, Buddhism seemed to be this thing. Everybody has to do Buddhism. And I thought, no. I don't think that's right. We are living here in a Christian culture, at least me, maybe you not, but I'm ancestors, everybody was in a Christian culture. And even if I don't feel like wanting to belong to a church, and the Christian church, but the culture is based on Christianity, which we have soaked into us, for generations. So for me, becoming a Buddhist seemed to me somehow off, like a fashion, and I didn't want to do anything like fashion. But still, I went to, it was not Buddhist, it was, not Advaita. Now the term goes away from, but in Italy, in Rome, there was a woman, and she, transpersonal psychologist, and I went there for several years, and she did. Why don't I get the word now out of my tongue? No. Vedanta. Okay. Vedanta meditation. And so I entered there a little bit in meditation, but I was quite frustrated because it was not a real guidance. Only when I said, when we shared something, she only laughed. And I thought, I would like to learn that. But if you don't tell me really what my problems are, what I can do. So anyway, maybe I approached it also more from the outside perspective. But at least it was the beginning. And, you know, and then I tried this and tried that and did a little bit of this and that. And a big part was also living here in the countryside for 5 years. I didn't do anything else than animals, plants, you know. That is, in seeing from now backward, that was also a dive into spirituality. And I actually had some peak experiences with that without knowing what it was. I understood that much later. I thought it was because I'm an artist. Maybe all artists have experiences like this. And then I talked with artists and tried, you know, you cautiously ask and you understand, no, that's not part of being an artist. So, but this I understood later. Anyway, yeah. And then I did for many years, I did meditation. And for a while, I followed from the distance, more or less, Andrew Cohen, because I found his this magazine, Enlighten Next. I found it very interesting. I learned a lot about spiritual directions, spiritual, how do you say, different spirituality approaches. And I found it very valuable. Then I went also to some retreats with him, and I was a little bit less excited about that.
Oh, really? Huh.
Anyway, and I took my distance then. But still, I tried a lot of things, and then now I'm sort of not doing a regular, real deep practice, but I feel that the awareness during the day, it's I mean, sometimes I sit also, you know, but for me, sitting is maybe not the right thing to do, you know. So I do it anyway, but I see that I can, let's say, concentrate or go deeper in different situations. For instance, in teaching or in singing meditations, there I can be in a different state of awareness, you know, but not necessarily by sitting. That might be, by the way, what I heard might be that the feminine approach to meditation is different. We need probably more movement or more, you know, some artistic thing, but not so much the static. That is to explore. I don't know if it's true, but in me, certainly, I see that it's true.
Yeah, very interesting. That's an excellent segue into the other topic I wanted to get in with you, which was your interest and your work with masculinity and femininity. And I know this is something that you feature on your website. And I'm very interested to hear in kind of your approach to this subject, because this is a subject that has been covered by a lot of different spiritual teachers or psychologists and so forth. So what angle do you like to approach the subject of working with masculine and feminine?
Yeah, let's say I come from the conviction in my youth and also in my early adulthood that men are better off and I better should try to become a man. I studied, my university studies were physics and mathematics. So I really wanted to be equal to a man, as many women actually did and still do, you know. They think their validity is to be as good as a man and even better in certain areas. And, you know, for a long time, I tried that and I realized I'm not a man. And I really loved men in my life. And my development was with my partners, because of my partners. And it was not always the good experience, but the let's say, the dramas, which then brought me further. Uh, um, let's say the suffering in relationships, which then was the kick to grow. And this I understood much later. Then I had integral theory, and I understood, how did I come here? You know, what the heck brought me here on this? It was not a deliberate attempt to grow. You know, I just was there, interested in integral theory. So I already was on a certain level. And I think it was always this, let's say, fight inner fight and also external fight with masculinity.
Mm.
You know, and then when I discovered the feminine power courses, I understood that this is not the way, that the feminine way is different. And actually, I was drawn to these courses when they did their free event I listened to. And they said, the masculine way is you have a drawing board and you put there where you want to go. You put down where you are. You collect your tools. And then you make a plan how you can go up to this goal. And then you go. And I never was able to do that. I never could follow through completely. You know, I never could even figure out exactly where I would go and with which means and tools. And so when I heard them say the feminine way is, I want to go more or less there. They call it North Star. And then I begin to go. And then on my way, I open the eyes and see what comes my way. What can I use? What can I adorate to which brings me further into the direction where I want to go? And I can also course correct when I see that's not the right way to go. So I course correct and go a little bit more there instead of there. And that was for me such a relief. I thought, that's my way of doing, and that's the feminine way. So all the time I tried to do the masculine way, and I was desperate because I couldn't do it. Not really as good as I wanted to do it. I mean, I could do it, but I was also a perfectionist, so I wanted to do it very well, and that didn't happen. And so since then, I entered into the feminine, exploring the feminine way of being, and I understood that I didn't live it, or only partly, and I had to reintegrate it. First discover it, and then reintegrate it. And now I'm sort of concerned with how to develop with me and other people role models for girls to be feminine without becoming masculine. That doesn't mean that we have a lot of masculine energy, and I certainly have. That's not that we have to go with red fingernails and all the time on high heels and be a feminine like this. That's not what I mean. But you know, the other way of being in the world, which is as valuable as the masculine way of being in the world, but as we try to become men, let's say, we over-exaggerated the masculine way, we women, in the past, let's say, 50, 60 years or even longer. Instead of creating a counterpart to the masculine way, which then together could become a whole and really be useful in the world, we exaggerated even the masculine part. And that's not good, neither for men nor for women, you know. Right. So, yeah, that's very my attempt. And then I found my late husband. And with him, this relationship was the first relationship where I really began to understand the life of a man. And that what I before thought about men was really not true. It was my own invention, you know. And I really appreciate that he allowed me to look into the life of a man in this, you know, in this century, or the last century. He was older than me. So I'm completely gone away from blaming men for my life or for the life of women altogether. And I'm very much in trying to show women their part when they are, you know, for instance, the Me Too movement. I think it's very good that women came out and told about these things. But on the other hand, you know, what is your responsibility? I'm very much into the shadow of the women. Now it seems as if women are all good and men are all bad, you know, but we have developed our quite ahead women, but we are more in this, let's say, postmodern nice thing, you know, we are we are all good and the men are all bad. But we forget that we have a big shadow and that we have co-created what has been. And that was the first insight I had when reading Wilber. Women have co-created the situation. And apart from, as I said, the abuse that had been abused in many ways, but still, women have co-created that. Otherwise, how could it be that more than half of the population would be suppressed for thousands of years? It is just not understandable. No? So anyway, and yeah, I realized that today the women are considered again as victims, and they consider themselves as victims and ask men to, I don't know what to do. But I think we have to go out of victimization. And that's what I have learned in the Feminine Power course. When you give up victimization and when you see your own, let's say, heal your own inner wounds, integrate your own shadow, that there is the power you have. And you don't have to blame, you don't have, there is no need and also no justification to blame somebody else. You know, take responsibility for your own behavior. For instance, you know, I was saying to these actors who said they were abused or raped or whatever from the directors. You know, when I tried to go into the singing world, I knew that this was the case. If you want to make a career, you better, you know, you have the choice. Or you do that normally, not always, but normally it's so. Then you must give the signal that they can do it with you, and then they will engage you. But if you are like a Puritan, like I was, sort of, you know, but the choice is there. Do you really want to pay the career with that, you know? And for men, maybe it's a similar situation or in other ways, but it's also when you want to go up the ladder in the career, you have to pay it in some way. And you have the choice if you want to do that. And women have the choice also. I mean, if you go with all the color in your and mini skirts and go at night along the street, you know, I mean, there is somebody from a lower level of development, which we know, and they cannot control their impulses. And you cannot give only guilt to the other part. You also have to consider what signals you are giving out. And so, you know, that's my comment to me too.
Yeah, that's that's really interesting. And you know, as a man, I love hearing women's perspective on these current movements and trends. And I'm curious what you would like to see shift on a mainstream cultural level in terms of movements like Me Too or feminism in general. And I know that you had alluded to the potential problematic side of this postmodern green, excessive valorization and putting femininity on the pedestal and denouncing masculinity. There definitely seems to be kind of a compensatory imbalance. And I'm curious, what would you like to see shift collectively for our cultural ways of thinking about and discussing these issues?
I would like, as regarding the men, that they engage more in inner work, that they do their own development, and they have to some lack in interior development, which women have done. And I want women to take more responsibility for their own way of being and not claim to be a victim or to give the power away, give their own power away to others by claiming that we need to be protected and we need to have the same amount of engineers in you know, that's just stupid. If we want the same amount of, let's say, people working at Google, women working at Google as many as men, then we also need to have the same amount of bricklayers in women, or people who do the streets, you know, the heavy work. that's just not a way to address the issue. We need to become self-aware and self-empowered to know what we want, what we really desire to do. And there is a difference between interests in women and men. That doesn't mean that women are more stupid if they don't want to be an engineer, you know. But, you know, as I said, I learn all this tech stuff and I, you know, sort of get along with it, but it's not my passion. And I meet men who are passionate about finding out all this tech things, you know, and very few women like that. And why should we begin to like it? Or why should men begin to like to, I don't know, to be nurses or something? Or, you know, that's, if they want, yes, but why should they? Because somebody thinks that half of everywhere should be half men and half women, you know, that's for me, and the cultural level is that just a stupid idea. And it's beside the point totally. So I would like to come in the culture that people come more to the recognition of where their own power is. And I mean not the external power that I can hit you or, you know, even psychologically put you down. I mean the inner power, the feeling I'm able to do certain things and I'm not able to do other things, or I'm wanting certain things and I'm not want other things. And also become very aware of the motivation, why we do certain things, become very real, very true to oneself. I think that's the next level which we need to go to in the development. And also see what is on the, how do you say, in the cellar, what is hidden in the cellar. The false ideas, which we are the drivers, the unhealed children traumas, you know, go into that and really see what is now. Is it your personality trait, your Enneatype? I studied a lot about Enneagram. Is it your Enneatype which is telling you to behave in this way, or is it really you? You know, find out these nuances, which for me are very, very important, and empower you. This is the sort of power we need to develop, not not power over, but power for. You know, power to be a change agent, for instance, or power to be an inspirator, or power to you know, whatever. But not power over, I push your back.
Right. Yeah. And one of the interesting things I've noticed or a common trend that I've been seeing when we talk about movements and what we would like to see different in these movements, especially people who are involved in integral theory or in spirituality, is some way of reintegrating the notion of inner work and inner development, and not just going all in on external activism or hashtags, you know, but some way of taking the first step of reclaiming that power and taking responsibility by doing the inner work, by introspecting and being able to excavate your shadow and see what's really, you know, going on inside of you.
Exactly. I fully agree. I just watched the videos from Anneke Lucas, who was a sex child slave. And she said, identifying as a victim is the prerogative for abuse, for hurting others. So we need to come out of the victim role. Men as well as women, you know, because often men feel like victims of their, I don't know, their bosses or whoever, you know, even if they're of their wives. Take over your responsibility for yourself and step out of victimhood. Discover your strength and self-esteem, you know. You need self-esteem for being able to introspect, because without self-esteem, introspection is like hell, because you find a whole lot of stuff which you don't want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have self-respect, then you go away. So I think this is the next hurdle to do, also with integral people. I feel that what I'm proposing here, to take responsibility for the conditionings which we are carrying with us, it's not very fashionable, I would say. Better talking about theory and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah, for sure. And just to back up for a second, you had said something earlier that had interested me, which was when you had met your late husband, that relationship really changed your conception of being a man and masculinity. I'm just wondering, how so? What changed for you?
Because he was willing to be open, completely open. He often told me what is going on with him and said it's just an information, and he didn't try to hide. And I was very blunt and very clear with him. And there were situations when, for instance, I knew that he was now getting into at the beginning at least, unconscious, let's say, manipulative things. And I asked him, do you want to know what you did just now? And he said, oh yeah, what did I do? And then I explained him, and he said, really? Oh. And then he realized that in his surroundings, everybody did things like that, As an example, he told me one night, tonight at 11 o'clock, there's something very interesting in the internet. And it's very interesting for you, and it would be, good for you. And I realized that it was not interesting at all for me, but he wanted me to be with him, and he didn't, because I wanted to go to bed. So instead of saying, you know what, I would really like to watch that, and I would appreciate if you come sit with me and watch it, he tried to put it reverse, he said, it would be perfect for you, if you did that. And many people do that. They pretend to do something for the other, instead they want that the other is doing something for them. And when he realized that, he was really like, wow, and then he saw it in other people, and he could see all these things, and we could be very open, and he could tell me also the things, and yeah, that was my shadow then, and I had to see, okay. Yeah. He always told me when I got too much into negativity, I'm an Enya type 4, always see the glass half empty. And then he said, oh, Enya type 4 is talking, And so we had this relationship of openness, of helping each other to see what is going on, the blind spots in the other, And we had some agreements how we would handle that. And even when there were moments of anger and so, we would take it back to us, instead of saying, you are blah, blah, blah. Maybe even if it came out, but afterwards we would say, that was my stuff. It has nothing to do with you. And that was a good way to grow together. And I saw for the first time that it was possible with a man, because the men I chose before were completely different. So, yeah. And then he also explained me the situation of men, especially, he was somebody who never had the possibility to climb the career, and he also didn't want to. But so it was, he explained me how that feels like, and how, how the expectations are for a man, and how you will be seen if you don't, comply with these expectations. And especially also from women, there were 2 wives, I think, left him when he lost his job, practically, and when he had then to do jobs which were not really very, very high in social esteem.
Mhm.
And so that was not good enough. And so that's also eye-opening that we women often choose men not necessarily for the man it's himself, but for what he can provide for us, you know. So yeah, that is also a big topic for women to look into that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I love what you said there about how inner development and growth was a natural part of your relationship, and how for the man, especially for the man, that presupposes a certain attitude of humility and vulnerability. You know, you had mentioned that openness. And I think
Yes.
that's definitely, it can be particularly challenging for men, you know, who we have a lot of, we pride ourselves in always having it together and being competent, being on top of things, being tough, right? And so just to introduce that component of vulnerability and openness, oh, you know, that was my mistake, oh, that was wrong, I think that's a huge shift in general, and I think something that we'd very much like to see as a cultural shift.
Yeah. And it's very, very important because men are in the treadmill as much as women were and are, because men have to respond in society to certain expectations, and they think that are theirs, but they are not free. They try to respond to these expectations, and I think that's exactly the work what men have to do, to find out who they really are and if they really want to do what they are doing. Maybe some want to, but many do it because it's expected, has always been, you know, and I have to work and I have to do and get bigger car, bigger blah blah. And this is like a slavery too for men, you know, and I think you men have to look into that and really find out who you are and
Absolutely.
what you want.
Yeah, and I appreciate you, you know, being fair like that, because I've certainly struggled with that myself, with a lot of expectations, and in my relationship with my partner, our gender, you know, traditional gender roles are definitely reversed. I'm at home doing the Talking with Teal podcast, but she's at work, and you know, it's quite different from the norm. And this is another question I think that kind of cuts to the heart of the debate in a way. And I think this is an excellent thing to think about when you were trying to distinguish between an integral or second tier standpoint versus a green postmodern, is how many of these expectations you think of gender roles and what we want men and women to be like and do are culturally constructed, or do you think that there's more of an innate biological basis for them, or even maybe a spiritual thing? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that whole subject?
I think it's both. Only reverting the traditional gender roles is not the solution, you know. It can be, but it's not automatically. I think biologically based is that the man wants to protect the family and wants to go out and, you know, be there for the family in a also financial way, because when a woman has a child, she would need that. Today, women think they can immediately go to work again, but they don't consider the child, because the child needs the close connection. It could also be with the father, but you know, the mother and the child, they were in symbiotic. And if the mother decides after birth 1 month, 2 months, and immediately go away, for a child, that is a trauma. So I do think this is biological, that a mother should stay for a while, and I would say some years, with the children. And in that time, that is also sort of biological, that the man is providing and protecting. You know, that's, for me, would be the right way of doing, because in the interest of the child. It depends whose interest it is. When I, as a woman, want to make career and become a better man, first of all, ask yourself, is it really what you want, or is it only the competition, as I told you about myself, that you want to be a better man? Or do you want to have a child, and the normal biological impulse is to have a child sooner or later? I was 40 and I had this strong impulse. Now it's almost too late. Now I want a child. It was physical impulse. It was not so much a mental thing because, anyway. And I believe that this is biological in women to want to have a child. Physically, not necessarily mentally, but physically. And if we want a child, then we should also take care for the child. It's like if you have a dog, she's out now, the doggy, and I have to take her in afterwards. If you have animals, you need to take care for the animals, and with children even more. And if you think you can send them around from one place to the other place to the other place, you don't have the well-being of the child as first value. You have other values first. And then it's questionable if you should have a child, especially today when you can avoid to have a child, which was not so time ago. Yeah, and I think it's nothing wrong with a man to try to contribute and be there for the woman also in the financial way. And what we really ask you is to be there also in the inner space, and that's what you need to learn, and that's fine. But often we exaggerate as women, and then men come out and are all, sort of powerless, and that's not what we want either. But we want men to be able to stand for themselves and their inner, as you said, vulnerability and their inner development. That's for sure what we want to have.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I'm just curious, I just want to ask a little bit about if you were coaching people or if you were teaching about this subject. I think it can be tricky at times in this journey of finding yourself through your gender identity, because we have culturally constructed expectations that we've internalized on one hand, and we have more innate biological impulses and tendencies on the other hand. And somewhere between all that, we have our unique souls, right? And just to give myself quickly as an example, when I moved from Hawaii to Oregon, I remember I was unemployed for like a year, a little less than a year. That was one of the most psychologically brutal times of my life. And I was very curious, like, is it because I've internalized that I'm a man, I should be working, I should be making money, I should be providing, and it's my inability to live up to those standards that I'm suffering? Or is it something more of a innate impulse that's not getting satisfied, that even if I let go of all the cultural conditioning, perhaps I'd still feel that way? And I'm still sorting it out and working through it, and kind of found it was a bit of both. But I'm just curious, what kind of advice do you give to people who are kind of confused and how to untangle all of these different factors to find their unique self?
Yeah, that's live your life and with much awareness. Anyway, your situation, I think it's a bit of both, and you just have to try out and all the time be aware and questioning. Is it because of that? Is it because of that? And not expect to have a clear answer. You need to be able to hold both perspectives as possible, and even at the same time, even if it's contradiction, be aware that both are pieces of truth. So not to try to find one way, and this is the right way. I think that leads us nowhere, not to growth, but explore it a little there and a little there and a little there, and also accept that this cultural conditioning was there for a long time, and that it's only for a short time that we can break these conditionings. But it doesn't mean that they are not there still, and maybe something of these conditionings is also good, So figure out what is good in it, and then by your own decision, adopt it and live it, and figure out what is really bullshit and eliminate it. But as I said, don't just go to the other side, exchange ones against the other, but try to find the right balance between what you see, what you find, and don't try to find a unique solution for no question at all. But hold perspectives, many perspectives at the same time. I think that's what we are learning in Integral, to be able to integrate and hold many perspectives at the same time, and don't need to know the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. It's such a nuanced and just really integral approach, of even sitting with that paradox and just juggling these multiple perspectives. And it really does, that frame really leads you towards a much better answer than the absolutistic one-size-fits-all kind of approach.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to get in with you today was, and I was really interested in talking to you about this, was on your website, you said you incorporated the teachings of Jordan Peterson. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because I find the Jordan Peterson phenomenon very fascinating, and he's quite a polarizing figure. Even within the integral community, he's quite a polarizing figure, and we were having interesting back and forth discussion about him on the Integral Forum. And I'm just thinking, I just want to ask you what you think about him, and what about his message do you like?
I came across him when it was 2.5 years ago, when he had his first videos published right afterwards, and he had all these students screaming at him, and he was in danger of losing his job. And I admired how he was standing there. And then I began to listen to his lectures, psychological lectures, and that was a big aha. That was like when I read Ken Wilber's books 20-something years ago. And that was the same type of aha, where I began to understand humans so much better, because he is a little bit different than Ken Wilber. He is handling a different realm of human existence, let's say. And I was excited and watched all the psychological lectures, everything, and also the other things. And I watched him grow from almost nobody, I don't know how many followers he had on YouTube, to I don't know what. And I really like his way. I mean, there are some behaviors which I don't like so much, but nobody is perfect. But generally, I like his stand for something, and his stand is against totalitarianism, against the tendencies to totalitarianism. And I'm grown in Germany, and I was surrounded by East Germany, and I was often in East Germany. No, it was always, oh God. Fear travel when we went there. So I know what a communist state is. And from, I was in Germany, I was born about 10 years after the war. I also had that in my blood. So I know the totalitarian from the right and from the left. And when people talk so thoughtlessly about, oh, that's no danger and this, blah, 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 I say, yes, it is. I saw the reality in my own life. And so I'm so admiring him for taking this firm stand and having all the shit on him. I mean, yeah, he's controversial maybe by somebody, and being able to live through that, have this courage to not give up and to be thriving in many ways. I couldn't do that. I don't have this resilience. I'm really, really, really full of admiration. And I do think that he is an integral thinker, and that he is focusing on the integration of the traditional stage. I think it is really, really important, because with the green meme, the mean green meme, people try to avoid to integrate in their lives, and they educated the children as if rules were bad. And so they are sort of limping. And so he is reintegrating that. And that's, I think this is the, thanks to the mean green meme, he has the result, the celebrity, not the following, which he has, because there is so much necessity for reintegrating that. In the 70s, it begins that people ask their children, do you want to go, the 4-year-old children, do you want to go to the beach? Or do you want to go to the mountain, or to China, or to Africa, and something like that? You know, I exaggerate. But they put children in a situation where they had to do decisions which they couldn't do. And at the same time, they allowed everything to the children without getting them putting them boundaries around. And we know from Ken Wilber that we need to go through our stages. And having boundaries and adapt to a system is the necessity for then liberate oneself and grow, you know. And this, with the appearance of green, has been totally neglected by many, many people. They let children go wild, and the poor children, you know, without boundaries, they are totally unhappy. And, you know, also this drug phenomena of young people, that has a reason, you know, because anyway, and he is re-educating, reintroducing this. And I find it very admirable and very good, very, very necessary. And I'm glad that there is somebody who is able to do it. He has this talent of transcending, which Ken Wilber unfortunately doesn't have. And so almost nobody knows Ken Wilber, but almost everybody knows Jordan Peterson. So that's in his favor, and it's a tool he has to bring his message out, and I find it optimum. I've really completely, I'm completely happy that he exists, and watching and reading his books are eye-opening, you know. Mm-hmm. And really, I saw all the lectures, also the biblical lectures. The biblical lectures have given me back the esteem of my culture, of Christianity. Which doesn't mean that I appreciate how church abused certain things. But still, generally, Christianity in itself, I can now re-embrace as my culture. Not my religion, necessarily, you know, but my with full-heartedly. Before I only said, yeah, that's my culture and blah, blah. But now I can really see the value by his biblical lectures. And yeah, I'm grateful that he's doing the work, and I hope he keeps up, because it's crazy.
Yeah, he can attest to that directly. I completely agree with everything you said, especially his, I guess you could kind of call like an integral or second tier regurgitation or expression of the traditional stage of development, or amber. And it's just been so amazing to watch how that there's been such a hunger for that in society, especially for young men. And I have a few friends who are young men who are kind of having problems in their life and felt kind of lost. And Jordan Peterson is their savior figure. And because he's given them this amber traditionalist kind of a message, but it's not amber traditionalist blue in the conventional sense that it's been in terms of like dogmatic religion, follow the rules and go to church, but it's kind of an integral, or I like to call it make conservatism sexy again kind of a approach. He viewed it with the symbolism, the Jungian archetypes, the hero's journey, and made it so alluring to people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how he's able to do that. And it is not traditionalism, as you say, blue. He doesn't want to get people back to blue.
Right.
He wants them to integrate blue. So for me, he is doing an absolutely great work. And,
Yeah, I completely agree. And before we start winding down, I wanted you to speak a little bit more about, just to share what you're doing on your website, and also with your, was it like a retreat place or B&B or something that you have in Italy?
Yeah. The website, that was one of the things I had to learn also, how to make websites and how to handle that. I never knew that before. I wanted everybody else to do that for me, but as you never find anybody, so I had to learn that anyway. Yeah, the website is only, let's say, the home of that. What I'm doing is the conversations with people on integral topics, but not only on integral topics, on interesting topics, and mostly bring the integral perspective into it without doing theory. Sometimes there are also conversations where the theory is, but not necessarily, because I found out during the years in which I was in the integral community that talking about theory is not attractive if you want people to understand a little bit about integral, because they don't want to listen to theory. So we have to do sort of being an example. And by talking, integrating it, bringing other perspectives and so, and show how integral could be in life without naming it, And I think that was the deep motivation to begin with the conversations, which then the Wisdom Factory, which I began with Mark. Yeah, and the website is only the home for that, so that people can, thewisdomfactory.net, where people can find all the things we have done. Quite a lot. It's about 4 years, and not every week, but for, let's say, 5 or 6 months the year, every week. So quite a bit. And what else did you want to know?
About, was it the Paradiso Integrale or something?
Paradiso Integrale, yes, I named my house in that way. Yeah, I hope that there would be, from the integral community, would come more people. The intention is to have it as an international meeting place, let's say, or doing retreats. But I never was very successful in that, also because, I have this marketing thing. I selling myself and my services, I'm not good in that. That's one of my shadows, which I have not yet successfully integrated. And I realized without doing a good marketing, people don't come. They don't know about it, and only have the website somewhere is not enough. So, but I still have a resistance in now, after having spent so many years in learning the tech stuff, now also learning all this other stuff against my inner feeling of, you have to, I did some courses in marketing and they were also orange. Mm-hmm. And that's not the way I want to do marketing, so I don't do any. That's how I end up. And so my house is mainly empty. I have some groups in the year, but not very many. And I invite people to come over. And it's in Italy, in Umbria, about 50 kilometers north of Rome. And or come for holidays and then we talk, or come with a group. Think tanks, that is my ideal. What we are doing on internet, do it in person. And maybe with my women's group this year, we find the possibility to meet. So I'm very ambivalent, because the house is big and I'm getting older and I don't know if I can manage that at a long time, or I find some way to maintain it without having to work too hard. It's also 10 hectares around of ground and olive trees and all things. So, or find a community, people who want to stay here as a community, or something, or sell it, who wants to have it and create some retreat place. I'm happy. So that's the way I'm doing publicity, but not more.
Well, hopefully with the small audience I have, I can help to get you out there in a not so orange marketing kind of a way. But I just find it so remarkable how, for both your website and the retreat center that you have there in Italy, our visions are completely identical. And I find that so inspiring that we think similarly, because with the website, I love how you are focusing on not just an explicit, this is an extremely technical presentation of integral theory, right? It's about embedding that implicitly in every other, like the range of topics you cover on that website is truly remarkable. I highly recommend everyone go and check it out. I mean, you do relationships, psychology, spirituality, sustainability and ecology, politics and current events, art, music. I love the art ones, and integral artists speaking about that. and infusing the integral message into these different fields. And that's really been my dream, and I'm so happy to see that you've done that, and I've learned a lot from watching your videos, and I really look forward to spending more time watching all of them. And I love the fact that you're also emphasizing with your with the Paradisio Integrale the physical location and the physical power of having people come together in person in a community space, in a real hard lower right quadrant physical space, to have a think tank and to have illuminating conversations. And it has so much more power than just online or just typing even, you know?
Yeah, that would be my dream, to be able to host some of those, more of those things, let's say. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Well, I'll have
Oh,
to.
I also wanted to say it's not only these topics, but also because we are older, I have also conscious aging as a topic, and also conscious dying, because these normally are topics which people don't want to listen to, but these are the only facts which everybody of us has to face, unless they die young, you know, but still dying. So I also want to bring taboo topics out of the closet, you know. That's when I learned now about the child abuse thing, and I'm planning to maybe do also something, some shows about that, find people who are willing to talk about it, and raising awareness of what is going on in the world, in the good things and the bad things. So both.
Wonderful. And we didn't have time to get into those topics today, but we'll have to do it again and dive in next time. But thank you so much, Heidi, for your time. And once again, I highly recommend everyone go and check out her website, which I'll link to in the video. And yeah, this was wonderful. I look forward to connecting with you more.
Yeah, thank you for having me as an interview. As I said, when you asked, no, that normally it's me doing the interviews, right? And it's really fun to be interviewed. That I can say something about myself.
Oh yeah, well, I'm so glad I can provide that for you. This is my fourth one, but I'm so happy to offer that to you. So we'll do more of them for sure.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Sure.